Hello there. Welcome to Blitz Transmissions. This is the Blitzcast number 76. I'm Tommy. Before we get into the content of this week's episode of the Blitzcast, as always, guys, check out the laundry list of links that can be found in the description below. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're not watching on YouTube, I would also encourage subscribe to Blitz Transmissions on YouTube. I've got awesome Star Wars content coming out all the time, and that's where I post most of my content. If you'd like to see this episode early as well as all my other content, the ARC Troopers in the Patreon already did see this early. You can check that out. Link is in the description below. You can get all the content early, as well as monthly giveaways, other awesome benefits. The link to the Patreon's in the description below. Become an ARC Trooper for just $4.99 a month. If you're a fan of the reviews I do on YouTube, or you just want to support the YouTube channel directly, you could always check out my YouTube channel membership, Rancor Battalion. For just 99 cents a month, it gives you access to exclusive badges, priority replies in my comment section. You get to check out all my reviews early on YouTube, and you get to vote on what I review next for the channel, just like the Patreon members do. If you'd like some Blitz Transmissions swag, like this Blitz Transmissions hoodie I have on right now, as well as lots of other cool merch, check out the Blitz Transmissions Armory over on Printify. Link to that is in the description below, as well as links to my Discord server and then my social media like my Instagram, my Blitz Bounties Instagram, my X, my TikTok, and you could always check out my email at blitztransmissions@gmail.com. Hello there. Hello, everyone. How are we doing? I hope you've all had a good week. It has been quite the week in the Star Wars action figure world, with, all kinds of, drops and exclusives, and we're still, in the midst of it. There's still more stuff coming out in the next couple weeks here as far as, store exclusives and, mainline waves. It's been nuts, and I've been having so much fun. I love this kind of chaos, and definitely been capitalizing on it this past week or so. So since our last episode of the Blitzcast, we have gotten into, and I believe completed, the quarterfinals for the March Madness Order 66 edition 2026, and as of recording this, it is day 1, and when you see this, day 2 will be out for the semifinals. We revealed the semifinals. We are down to our final 4 for the March Madness. And before I go any further, let me just say I'm recording this at lunchtime, so I live right by the interstate, and there's probably going to be some loud cars that go by that, while we're recording this. There's my disclaimer right there. It is what it is. So the matchups for the semifinals, when this comes out, you'll be able to vote on them on my posts tab on YouTube, and I should have shared the link to the polls everywhere that I mentioned prior. So Patreon, Discord, the Syndicate Discord, all that stuff. It is the Kashyyyk Trooper versus Captain Gregor, and then it is the Galactic Marine versus Commander Thorn. So we have some great matchups. It's cool to see equal representation of CGI prequel trilogy clone troopers and some Clone Wars animated clones. I feel like those are the two biggest demographics of clone lovers, are those two sources of media. So it's cool to see a pretty even spread of representation between the two. Let's see here. So, other than that, we have a couple other reviews that came out. Definitely check out the big collaboration vlog that came out this past week. The This is the Sunway toy hunt. I did team up with my fellow members of the Syndicate, Sarlacc Digest, and SKN, Shadow Nose Network. And I did also team up with some friends of mine, the 1313 Podcast and Hybrid. And we all went out, and throughout the continental United States, East Coast, West Coast, the Midwest, we had all different regions represented, and we went out on Sunday, March 22nd, the release date, the street date for all of the Mando and Grogu toy releases. And we showed you guys what we could find. Was it a good hunt? Was it a bad hunt? Find out in that awesome collab vlog. That is doing really well. I'm happy with how that's doing on the channel. We did also, obviously, over on the Sarlacc Digest YouTube channel, have our latest episode of the Sarlacc Digest toy chest. So we kind of debriefed on what we liked, what we didn't like, and we had a good time having that conversation, so that was good. I also had several reviews come out this week. I got reviews out for the new Target exclusive Season 1 Mando remake. You might be able to see him in the corner of the screen up here. Amazing figure. Massive upgrade. Oops, sorry, I didn't turn my ringer off. Work email. That's a great figure. Love him. And I also did review some multi-packs for the Black Series. Both of these were Amazon exclusive for the Gaming Greats subline. This is such a mouthful. I love how much of a mouthful this pack is. The Phase 1 Assault Trooper, Coruscant Guard, and Battle Droid Officer Training, and then the ARC Trooper Infiltrator and Commando Droid Training. Those are two multi-packs that came out from my favorite Star Wars video game of all time, Battlefront 2 2017, and I am really happy that I have them in hand. I enjoy the figures. I like some more than others. Check out the reviews if you want to hear my thoughts. And then this week, we also had a surprise reveal for the Vintage Collection line, Hasbro's 3 3/4 action figure line, a debut, never before made, the Ore and Geonosian Picador. That is the little creature that pulls the chariot that Padme and Anakin go into the Geonosis arena on. Super cool. I pre-ordered 4 of them on Big Bad Toy Store this week because Johnny Mustache, the Mustache of Knowledge from SWTVC, let me know that there are 4 Ores in the Geonosis arena. One of them being on the chariot, and then the other 3 being without the chariot. So I wanted to have all of them, of course. You guys know me, so I pre-ordered 4. Super excited for those to come in. Really think the creature looks great. Mr. Stevie did a great post, Steve Evans, on his Instagram about it, and I love how he got him posing, sitting, and waving. Pretty funny. And then, definitely go give a shout out to SWTVC, by the way. They had just wrapped up their March Madness for the Vintage Collection. The finals were Luthen Rail versus Papa Pong, Ping Pong Krell, and Luthen Rail took it home, and he is now a champion of both March Madness and Last Figure Standing. So definitely go give some love to the SWTVC guys. They put, stupid amounts of work into the March Madness, and they've been great mentors to me on how to put together a community poll. So, with that, I think that wraps up all of our housekeeping and stuff. Guys, also, make sure you check out Carbonites. They've got some awesome cases that are dropping as of recording this today. They've got 2 new cases from the Clone Wars that are dropping. I'm very excited about both of those. Definitely check out Cube Squadron as well. They are almost to the 1,500 Kickstarter backer mark for them to do their final reveal and go into production for the Cube Squadron project. So please make sure that you are showing both of them support. I'll have links in the description below for Carbonites and Cube Squadron, as well as the Syndicate Discord. If you want to get in on all the news beyond Star Wars and just cover fandom altogether, then you could check out, we're one-stop shop for me, Sarlacc Digest, and Shadownose Network. You can check out the Syndicate Discord. Definitely check that out. So, everybody, we have not much Star Wars news this week. Things are starting to wrap up. We're starting to see, press releases and stuff for merch for May the 4th, because that's coming up soon. Honestly, a little over a month away. That's wild to think about. And then Maul Shadow Lord is just around the corner. At the point of this, it's a week and a half away at the point of this coming out. So we had an exclusive clip, quote unquote, that was shared to Instagram and, social media and stuff from Star Wars official social media. And it was, that show, man, looks so polished. I kind of gave out all my thoughts, last week on the Blitzcast, so I'm not going to reiterate and rehash what I said last week, but I generally am just, my hype keeps building for this series release, and I think it's just going to be an amazing series, and I'm really excited to dive into it and have, something to cover media-wise every single week here on Blitz Transmissions. But if you guys know me, if you know Blitz Transmissions, you know that a lot of times on light news weeks, one of the things that I do here on the channel as of late is get a little philosophical with you all. So there's a Bible verse that I wanted to talk about this week. This is a Bible verse that I caught, I looked at maybe a couple days ago now. And I wanted to talk about how it relates to Star Wars, and talk about, get a little philosophical with you guys. So, I'll give my disclaimer that I give all the time. I am a practicing Roman Catholic. I do not expect that anybody converts to Christianity or Catholicism because of this podcast. I would just ask that you be open and mindful to what I have to say, and beyond my religious beliefs. I do believe that like a lot of what's in the Bible is just good moral compass stuff, So I think that anybody can benefit from this kind of stuff, and I hope that people benefit from this kind of conversation. And I really hope that we can have further conversation and discourse because of it. I have been really enjoying doing these topics, but like I said, you are not obligated to listen to it. So if you don't like Christianity, if you don't like religion, you can just kindly click on to a different video, But yeah, this is just something that I like to cover here on the channel, and it's very personal to me, and that's kind of the point of the Blitzcast, is for me to be a little bit more personal, a little bit more intimate with my audience. So that little disclaimer aside, there's a Bible verse, comes from the Gospel of Matthew. So we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 5, verse 44. And it reads as follows: "But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you." That is such a very difficult verse to wrap your head around, and I thought that we could talk about it, maybe look at some ways that Star Wars relates to it, and how Star Wars really does teach us very similar messaging. So the very idea of this to our flesh and blood sounds wrong, doesn't it? Like this goes against exactly what your a lot of times our hearts and our minds will tell us. Love your enemy isn't the very term enemy, somebody that is, opposed to you, and somebody that you mutually dislike in a lot of ways. And bless them that curse you. We live in a society that is very eye for an eye. And that's always been not just American society, but all throughout history. I mean, that from the very earliest written codes of law, from I believe like all the way back going to like Constantinople. It's all the way back in those days. There was written eye for an eye. If somebody steals, you chop off their hand. That kind of thing. A sense of fairness in that way, and that was how the justice was served back then. And this verse goes directly against that line of thought, and I feel like that line of thought is so deeply ingrained in us as people. Now, I've sat with this verse, and I've always been aware of this verse in the Bible, but I've always say, I've struggled with it, because again, my flesh and blood want to, why would I love my enemy? Why would I bless those that curse me? Why would I, pray for people that persecute me and use me? I'll open with this, and then we'll go into, the Star Wars aspect of it, because it's kind of funny how a lot of times Star Wars helps me to understand myself better and to understand my faith better. Star Wars is a great avenue for that. And I think that Star Wars really aligns, a lot of things in Star Wars align with the morality of what we see in the Bible. I was, talking to a friend recently, and they had said to me, we live in the same world where people thought they knew better than Jesus and crucified him because they thought that he was not, in fact, the Son of God. And they crucified him. They tortured and killed him in like one of the most gruesome ways possible, of public execution. And that is a statement that stuck with me as well. There's a lot of situations in life where you'll sit there and be like, why me? Like, I try to do all the right things, and obviously, you can never be perfect, and that's, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I'm not a perfect person. I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. I don't know what just happened there. That was very weird. Okay, light just turned off. That was weird. I'm not a perfect person. I've made plenty of mistakes in life. But I think it's, you tend to get it's an easy mindset to get into of, why is this happening to me? Why is this bad thing, or these bad things? And oftentimes in life, when it rains it pours. So a lot of times, and there's the saying, like, bad things come in threes. It's very easy to get caught up in, why is this happening to me? I believe that everything in life happens for a reason, and obviously that comes from a religious sense. But I believe that there is opportunity to learn life lessons from everything that happens. But, I looked at, why is this person, maybe for example, like, why is this person being mean to me? Why is all the way back from, like, you're a kid. Why is so-and-so being mean? Why is this happening? Why did this happen to me? Why did I get in this car crash? Blah, blah, blah. And then you look at it like, well, there have been plenty of good world leaders that have been assassinated. There have been, plenty of philosophers and preachers that have been killed and tortured, and Jesus was tortured and killed. Meanwhile, there's actual bad people doing actual bad things, and no harm comes their way. And that kind of feeds into that mindset, doesn't it? Of we should get revenge in a way. We should get that payback. Now, I want to bring this into Star Wars, because I feel like very frequently we talk about the Jedi when we talk about faith, and I think that makes the most sense, because the Jedi are like the monks of the Star Wars universe. They're like, the ancient religion, the monks, and the Jedi exhibit a lot of qualities as I've gotten older and as I've matured more, I've come to realize are very similar to real life. Because the Jedi as individuals themselves are not perfect. A reason that Obi-Wan Kenobi is my favorite Jedi, which, by the way, Obi-Wan Kenobi is my favorite Jedi in all of Star Wars, is that Obi-Wan believes in a system and continues to make mistakes. But he always has the best intentions at heart, And that is something that's very admirable for me, or to me. I believe that Obi-Wan's character is one that you can learn a lot from, in that he is very human. And that I think is very important, for this conversation as well, is that people are not forever good or forever bad. People always have the opportunity to change. Every day that you wake up is an opportunity for you to seek to make a conscious effort to become a better person. I have friends in my life that I have not given up on, and I had people have questioned it, and it is that mentality of, if I give up on this person, on my friend, there are situations where sometimes you just have to walk away and give people space. But at the same time, giving up on somebody, are you doing yourself a service, or are you hurting yourself and them more by just walking away from the problem? So the Jedi honestly, exhibit this, and we probably talked about this a couple weeks ago now on the Blitzcast, the similar interaction. I think of Obi-Wan versus Maul in the Clone Wars Season 5. Maul has the woman that Obi-Wan loves, Satine, captive, and he kills her in front of Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is so crushed from this. He's so, feels so defeated. Maul is trying to tempt Obi-Wan to the dark side with this. We see the same message or mantra throughout Star Wars, all throughout the franchise, the movies, the shows, the series, this temptation to the dark side. And a lot of times the temptation to the dark side is very similar to us reacting with our flesh, us reacting out of spite, out of anger, out of impulse. and not taking a moment to step back and think, not just bigger picture, but also think about the importance of why we're feeling what we're feeling and what's the best way to act or sometimes not act on that. It takes much more strength and maturity to resist those kinds of impulses than it does to act out of anger and to act out of rage and hate. I know there are people that hate me on the online space and real life. There's certainly people in real life that hate me. And those people choose to exercise that hate through impulsive actions. I'll use the example of, going on my YouTube videos, and there are people who go on my YouTube videos and they use alt accounts. And if you don't know what an alt account is, it's short for an alternative account. Basically, somebody pretending to be someone else, just pretending to be a random commenter, and commenting something hateful on your page, commenting something rude or mean or hateful. The funny thing about alt accounts is a lot of times people think that they're staying anonymous. They're not. I know who you are. Nice try though. But things like that happen, and there have been moments where I've been frustrated by that. Why, man? Like, why? This person hates me because of something that happened so long ago. Why does this person do this? And there are moments where I have that inkling of responding with my flesh. I'm going to go do the same thing. I'm going to go, I'm going to respond, and I'm going to make an alt account. I'm going to go to their page and comment something mean. But what does that achieve? How do I rise above by stooping to the level of others? I know we've talked about that on the Blitzcast before, but in this sense, looking at this Bible verse from Matthew, how freeing it is to say to look your enemy in the eyes and say, I love you. I'm praying for you. I hope that, I genuinely, deeply, I hope that you get through and you overcome whatever it is you're dealing with right now. Especially to those that persecute you. There's something going on in that person's mind that leads them to the conclusion that this is the only solution. Whether that's a lack of faith, whether that's a lack of maturity, whether it could be a mixture of both. I think it's very important to show people grace. We see this in this interaction between Obi-Wan and Maul. Maul is acting very hatefully toward Obi-Wan. Maul's whole purpose in the Clone Wars is to find and destroy Obi-Wan Kenobi. And not just kill him. It is to destroy him from the inside out and take apart what makes Obi-Wan Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan sees this and is able to... Obi-Wan has such strength of character to be able to resist this when Maul is facing him with the threat of killing the one that he loves. And Obi-Wan says to Maul, not word for word, and I know I brought up this quote recently, this isn't word for word, only the weak embrace the dark side. It takes true strength to resist the dark side. Only the weak embrace it. And obviously Maul, follows through with what he was going to do, and he kills Satine, and Obi-Wan has her in his arms, and she dies in his arms. And Obi-Wan has Maul gives Obi-Wan the opportunity to respond with hate, to fight fire with fire, and respond to hate with hate. Obi-Wan chooses not to. This is one of those that has lived with me since I first watched that episode. And we see it time and time again with other characters as well. A great Star Wars example of this is Umbara, the critically acclaimed Umbara arc of the Clone Wars. Ask any cloner or any Clone Wars kid what one of their favorite arcs of the Clone Wars is. I guarantee 99% of fans will say one of their top 5 is the Umbara arc. In this arc, we have Pong Krell. Deceives the clone troopers, gets them to kill each other without knowing, just kills them in the most brutal, awful ways possible. Has such a disdain and a hate for clones and for the Republic. Captain Rex is given the power in his hand to execute Pong Krell. And a lot of people wonder why Rex can't do it. And Pong Krell is taunting him. Pong Krell knows Captain Rex will not do it. And ultimately, Dogma ends up doing it, and there's consequences for that. But Rex, a lot of people maybe look at that as a moment of weakness in Rex's character. But I would argue that that is a show of Rex's strength of character. Knowing that Krell needs to face justice, knowing that killing him now is not going to make anything that happened better. Captain Rex, I have his J Guys tattooed on my left shoulder. It was the first tattoo I ever got. I got it in college. I want to say in 2021. That is a moment that stuck with me. My ever since I watched that episode when I was in middle school. When I was in middle school, I dealt a lot with bullying. I always had the mindset that I will not allow people to bully me. But they did their best, man. A lot of it stemmed from me always, I had a friend that really did get picked on. He was the kid that got picked on a lot. Shout out Andrew. And I would always jump to Andrew's defense. And what I found was, over those years, fighting fire with fire never truly solved anything for me. It would just escalate things, and it would keep things going. And over the course of the 3 years of middle school, at a very young age, I had to learn to be a lot more mature than you would expect a 12 to 14-year-old to be. I had to be both a leader within my own group of friends, and I had to be a mature adult when it came to, physical confrontation, verbal confrontation. I got really good at, for lack of a better term, shit talking, and I got really good at verbal judo. And it's actually a skill that there's a whole book on it. It's a really good book. The Art of, Verbal Judo. You have the ability to take a situation from here to here, real heightened escalated situation, and de-escalate it through your actions. Oftentimes in life, we're faced with things that we can't control. And there's that age-old saying of, you can't control what happens to you. You can't control actions, but you can control your reaction. You'll find in life that while it may feel in the moment more satisfying to respond with your flesh and to respond to fire with fire, in the long run, it stifles your growth, and it stops you from growing as a person, and it stops you from becoming better, rising above. How easy it would be to just go back and forth with people endlessly all the time. But what does that do to you? What does that say about you? That's, I guess, my question to you guys watching right now or listening. That is why this Bible verse is so important, and that is why the lessons of the Jedi are so important. To love your enemy, to bless them that curse you, to do good to them that hate you, to pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. It goes against everything that we know. And yet somehow it makes you feel better inside to take the higher road. because you are, and I've been talking about this for a couple months now on the Blitzcast, and recently I feel like I had a test of that, giving up my frustrations and anxieties to God. There are things happening with other, things will happen with other people at work, in your personal life, you name it. But if you are able to control your response and you're able to choose to rise above and seek to learn from all the situations you're involved in and seek to grow, there is no way you can lose. I believe very deeply that this Bible verse is directly aligned with the Jedi Code, and it's one of the best messages that is constantly reinforced in Star Wars. It in a lot of ways too. Look at when all the times the Jedi have self-restraint. Look at Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi. He's given the opportunity to defeat Vader, to kill him, and act on his own rage and his own anger because he doesn't want his sister. He's trying to protect his sister. And then he sees that on the inside, after he cuts Vader's hand off, he sees Vader is the same on the inside as him, that they both have these droid hands. They've both had their hands cut off. Luke realizes in that moment that he and his father are the same on the inside. And it's in that moment he chooses to rise above and looks Palpatine in the eye, looks the evil in the eye, and says, I'll never join the dark side. How much more powerful is that than acting out of his, emotional response, acting out of his flesh? He could have totally taken out Vader. Would he have killed Palpatine? Probably not. Maybe he would have ended up having to succumb to the dark side, and then he lives an eternal life of suffering. That is the story of Anakin. Anakin is a person who throughout his whole life reacts out of emotion and reacts with his flesh. Look what happens to Anakin. He becomes a slave to the dark side. Look at Dooku. We got to see that, a fantastic, phenomenal story in Tales of the Jedi. Dooku loses Qui-Gon and chooses to act out of his flesh and turn his back on the Jedi. Chooses not to rise above. Ends up becoming a slave to the dark side. Look at Maul. Devotes his entire life to revenge on one man. And he's a slave to the dark side. And all of these characters die horrible, horrible deaths here. Now, this is the other point I want to bring up, speaking of Luke and Vader, though. Because I know I brought up Anakin and him becoming a slave to the dark side. Darth Vader is always Anakin Skywalker on the inside. Although they are, at face value, two different characters. It's the same person at the end of the day. It is never too late to change. And that is a point that I made earlier in this Blitzcast episode. There are plenty of people out there that will tell you, you're good, you're good. If you're bad, you're bad. Good is good. Bad is bad. Good, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. Good. If you get that reference, let me know in the comments. It is never too late to change. That is a reason that I believe that bad people, quote unquote, are still here. Wicked, evil people are still here. And that good people, they seem to die too soon, don't they? From the religious sense, I believe that bad people are often left here on Earth much longer than good people, because bad people are given more opportunity by God to get their life straight. Whereas good people they've achieved their goal. They've achieved God's will for them. And God decides it's time for them to come home. Very much the same in the Force, is it not? Qui-Gon, one of the best Jedi ever in the Jedi Order, probably one of the best examples of what a Jedi should be, dies very early on at the hands of Darth Maul. And everything happens as the Force wills it, don't we know? And it always seems like Qui-Gon's gone too soon. But Qui-Gon served his purpose in the Force. And he comes back and, through the living Force, he's able to talk to Obi-Wan and Yoda and teach them the ways of the how to become one with the cosmic force and ascend your body, physically. There are plenty of characters in Star Wars that seem like they're gone too soon. And aren't they the best characters, though? The ones that seem like they're gone too soon? The ones we love the most, gone too soon? And the ones that have the most to learn are the ones that are left to stick around. I think that is another example of this Bible verse here. It takes so much more strength to rise above things that happen to you and be able to control your reaction as opposed to react with the same, fight fire with fire. I've said it several times now. It is so difficult to do, though, and I know I don't have a perfect. I know I've not been batting 1,000 when it comes to I talk some smack every now and again. I throw my little passive aggressive comments into things every now and again, and I act on my emotions and my flesh every now and again. But that's human nature. We are not perfect. We're always going to, in the religious sense, we're always going to be sinners, and in the life sense, we're always going to be learning. You're never going to become a master of life. If you go around, if you walk around in life and you think that you're I'm a good person 1,000,000% of the time. I don't do anything wrong. Everything I do is right and just. I think there's an ego that needs to be put in check there. But hey, that's just me. I think that it's also dangerous to develop this mindset of, why is everything happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Because then you kind of develop that mindset toward everything, and there can be situations that are your fault or things that you did that were wrong. But if you're somebody that's able to justify and rationalize everything that you do, right or wrong, and convince yourself that everything you do is technically right, then that's where we also come into an issue, because if you're able to justify things that you do that are wrong, then you can justify hating your enemies, cursing those that curse you, the eye for an eye. And in that same regard, I think it speaks to, a certain level of, we live in a society now, where, where moral relativism is very popular now. Where there's technically nothing's technically bad or good. It's just our perception of it. Well, I would say that has directly resulted in a lot of this kind of behavior from adults mostly. If you don't believe in anything being good or bad, and know that there's no consequence for anything, then and when I say consequence, I don't mean like jail time or crimes or things. I mean like, if you don't believe that there's any sort of, consequence when you go to the grave, then what's the point of being a good person? How can you simultaneously call yourself a good person, but then also say, well, technically nothing's right or wrong, it's all relative? Well, then how are you a good person? It's hard to measure, and it kind of comes into contradiction. Yeah, I think that it is incredibly important that a message like this gets talked about right now, especially in like the Star Wars space, and especially in like the Star Wars action figure space. I think it's important for this kind of thing to be talked about. I definitely don't see other people talking about it, and I know firsthand that many of us do not act as the Jedi do, and we act upon impulse. We respond with our flesh, and it can be so difficult to practice this idea of not giving into hate and not responding to hate with hate. It goes against our primitive instincts, But how are we to grow as people, and how are we to give people the grace to give them the opportunity to grow? if we just think that, oh, you wronged me once, now you're forever a bad person. Oh, I wronged you once, so now I'm forever a bad person, right? It's a difficult thing to wrap your head around. And it's a very complex thing, but I think when you look at Star Wars as a whole, you find this message time and time again. And you see it with Vader. Vader is given the opportunity to right his wrongs. He does so by destroying, the representation of pure evil, and then becomes one with the Force. His mission is complete in life. The Force takes him back. Same can be said about Ben Solo. Look at Kylo Ren. Did terrible things throughout the sequel trilogy. Terrible, horrible things. Was a leader of a fascist regime. Leader of a different space Nazi regime than Darth Vader was. Comes back to the light. Forgives himself and forgives those around him. He ends up sacrificing himself, becomes one with the Force. But it's because he has that level of love and selflessness that he did not once have. I apologies if I'm briefly pausing here. I'm just trying to make sure I've stated all I wanted to say on this one. Because I feel like it's a very important message. Very important message. And I really want to drive it home. I guess my message to you guys for, this week and, throughout the, coming weeks, maybe, not necessarily from a religious sense, but give this some thought. Give this idea of changing your mindset, broadening your viewpoint on this. It's very easy to be very adversarial with people. But is it always worth it? Is it always worth the tit for tat, the back and forth? If somebody does something to me, does that mean that I should respond? Sometimes the answer is not responding at all. Sometimes the answer is recognizing that, if someone does something that wrongs me, oftentimes it's because they themselves are hurt. And out of that hurt, they act out of anger and they act out of vengeance. And just because I believe that I'm a good person, I know that there are people that believe I'm evil and that I am not redeemable. That's crazy to think about, but I know that I've thought the same about others myself. It's never too late. There's always an opportunity to become a better person. This is something that the Jedi believe in very deeply. They constantly give their enemies the opportunity to surrender, the opportunity to change, to give up. And that could be seen as a weakness of the Jedi, but ultimately I believe that it's a greater strength than could ever be held by, any physical, tangible power. Obi-Wan Kenobi says to Darth Vader in the original Star Wars movie, "If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you could possibly imagine." And Vader is just here. He's, narrow-minded. He's in the here and now. And he does strike down Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan becomes one with the Force. Obi-Wan goes on to lead Luke on a journey to go find Master Yoda and inevitably lead him on the path that takes him to saving the galaxy. I think that is where I'm going to leave it on this one, guys. I think that's where I'm going to leave it. I got to go. I got to get ready for work here pretty soon. Which is part of the reason that I did this earlier in the day. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Blitzcast. I hope this was a little bit of a thought-provoking one. I hope I wasn't too all over the place. Give yourself grace. Give other people grace. Think before you act. Think before you speak. And consider giving, especially those that act out of hate, give them grace. Give them, forgiveness. In the religious sense, pray for them. Consider their situation, So with that, guys, I'm going to leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Blitzcast. As always, check out all the links in the description below. Of course, I'm going to get out of here now. As always, guys, may the Force be with you.
Breaking off. All units, fire at will. 1-2, pick a target. Too many, Captain. Launcher stabilizer, gold 6. Anybody, cover me. I got 2 vultures on my tail. Gotta hold them here. Watch your left. I can't shake them. I'm hit. Where's our reinforcements?